everyone, and welcome back to Hope from Home, the show where we bring you conversations of hope from our home to yours. Today, Luisa Florentine speaks with Dr. Robert Adams, who's working on the front lines of the pandemic. Noelle Okel has a conversation with Sabina Shafari of the Toronto-based young adult ministry, Faith Connections, about how they've had to adjust during this time. And Jermaine Bagnall speaks with Father David Pavanka of Franciscan University, who tells him about new initiatives to help their students. And of course, they'll all tell us where they're finding hope from our home to yours.
Dr. Adams, thank you so much for being with us today. You're one of the Catholic physicians in the front lines right now. So what sorts of reactions have you been seeing and hearing from your colleagues and patients right now?
A lot of people just worried about the PPE, which is the personal protective equipment that everyone's meant to wear. Part of the biggest challenge is the evidence and science around some of the personal protective equipment for the coronavirus is somewhat contradictory at times. And certainly the approach and the way that some of that evidence has been applied has been certainly bouncing back and forth, sometimes hourly and other times daily, especially initially. And I mean, one classic example is how we've recently just been forced, mandatory to wear a full face mask and surgical mask during the whole entire shift. Which was never there at the start of the pandemic, and yet we're actually starting to have the pandemic tailor off in terms of the number of cases that we're seeing and the number of fatalities. So there's been a lot of frustration from a lot of people on that front, that if you're telling us to do one thing and saying we should have all this personal protective equipment, then provide it for us. Otherwise, of course, we're going to get more anxious. And if it's not the case, then tell us that we don't need it, but tell us which scenarios we do, and be very clear and consistent about that. So amongst patients, I think it's exactly the same. People who in the initial stages of the epidemic and pandemic just thought to themselves, well, what am I meant to be doing? Just sit at home and wait? And so that's been another problem for a lot of patients is those many conundrums and scenarios they're playing out in their heads as they're either deciding to come to hospital or not. And then once they're there, have I even been diagnosed with COVID? And now I've been maybe diagnosed with COVID. How can I protect my family? And so it's been a very, very challenging time for patients. And, as a physician, my heart sort of bleeds that I don't have better advice to give them. And I don't have, a better set of treatments or other recommendations for them, except for, how I would commonly recommend the treatment for the common cold and mild cases of the flu that don't need to be hospitalized. So.
Right. Wow. Yeah. There's a lot of, attitude of fear surrounding us right now, certainly. And I can't imagine how much more elevated it is in the emergency room. Yeah. So with that, what are the ways that you and your family are really working to cultivate faith right now as you, you're at home, if not at work, but at home?
Now we're very blessed. We attend a mass with very traditional priests, and so they are working very, very hard, like I know a lot of parishes are, to at least try to provide communion and confession by appointment. And so that at least is something that I'm extremely grateful for those priests who are making those considerable efforts to make themselves as available as possible. And we're trying to, including the coronavirus pandemic every night in our daily rosary, and then trying to continue to say lots of mental prayers for those who are suffering from it, directly, and who are actually the ones infected and being hospitalized, but also those who are having, that heightened anxiety and looking ahead to their future. And I think all of us are just wondering, we're constantly being told, we're never going to get back to normal. We're never going to get back to normal. And you just think, this is a unique situation that we're living through here. And I don't want to believe that we're not going to get back to some normality. I can't conceive that we couldn't. We're a very advanced society. And, is coronavirus not just a blip on the landscape like swine flu was? I don't know. It's challenging. We certainly can't take it lightly. I always encourage all of my friends and family that I speak to and engage with that you've got to engage in your spiritual life, and you've got to trust in God. And fear and anxiety only come from the devil, and it's hard. I'm not saying that as a platitude. I'm truly saying that so that people engage with their faith more and engage with their prayers more, because that's all that you have at certain times. So
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing just your personal account of all this. And it's so lovely to see just your level of calm as you're sharing all this. And
yeah.
it reminds me a lot about that Bible passage of when Jesus calms the storm, and how his disciples are panicking, and they're meanwhile Jesus is asleep, and so they wake him up and they're like, why aren't you doing anything? Like, we're scared, and all he says is peace, be still, and so I think that's kind of what we can do right now, and I know it's difficult. It's easier said than done, but the Lord that we're all praying to, he's the same Jesus who calmed the storm, and he's the same Jesus who walked on water, right? So he can redeem this seemingly uncertain time.
I think the Psalms, taking the quote that you had, I think the Psalms have tremendous number of hopeful passages that at a time like this particularly are of great help to us. Looking towards King David and seeing how tumultuous a life he led, and the experiences of his life, and we can look at it and we can say, well, what, coronavirus probably isn't far off some of the terrible things that happened to him, and yet he still turned to God and said, you are my rock, I'm going to follow you. And he just prayed to him to save him, and this is the thing. Sometimes we have to be saved from ourselves, because, we are such anxious people wanting so much, and God will give it to us, but we have to pray to him, and we have to be patient, and we have to have that calm in our hearts and our souls. And I'm sort of thinking back to a few years ago now, when there was a program on called I think it was called the Holy Hour from the UK, and it was taking some individuals just from society and just trying to show them how 1 hour a day in silence can give you so much solace, and can be that area of your life where you can gain control of that anxiety and that fear, and you can also take that moment to prepare yourself for the coming storm that's going to be there tomorrow, because tomorrow will always bring its challenges. At the same time, we read a lot of how actually domestic violence and other things of that nature have actually increased during the lockdown. And I don't think either of those are a surprise. A good household at this time would try to enjoy the amount of time that they brought together. But a household that struggles and has a lot of stresses and so on is always going to have even more stress added on from the lockdown. And so what I would do as well, I mean, it's very, very difficult, but people have been trying to provide, that charity to one another. There was recently the music concert that happened, which was wonderful. Artists trying to provide, some support and entertainment to people. And all of us must try and look, whilst we're in lockdown, to try and provide support to one another. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely to see how people are coming together in creative ways in light of all that's happened, and also to kind of shed some light in some of the more, dark experiences that some of us are having right now as a result of staying at home, as you said. So yeah, a lot to pray about and to continue during this time. So thank you so much for this lovely chat, Dr. Roberts. I certainly learned a lot about what goes on in the front lines, and I in keeping you and your colleagues and your family in my prayers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello, Sabrina Shafari. Thanks so much for joining us from Toronto today. How are you keeping?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for inviting us over on the program. It's a bit of a sunny day, so hopefully we get a bit of a break from all the gray weather we've been having.
Oh, amen to that. Listen, as the interim director of Faith Connections, you have the finger on the pulse of what many young Catholics are looking for today. I was hoping that we could talk, quickly about your ministry and specifically what resources are available for young Catholics looking to strengthen their spiritual life during this, difficult time of isolation.
Yeah. So Faith Connections is one of 6 Font ministries that we were established in 2005 by the Sisters of St. Joseph as a way to connect and minister with young people specifically. So our ministry caters to people ages 18 to 39. And we offer a wide variety of events like Theology on Tap Central. And no matter what we do, we strive to create inclusive places to meet young adults where they are. If they're searching for ways to grow spiritually, deepen their faith, and grow with communities. So with the events that are out there and the resources that are available, they abound. They're at the moment online, there's a saturation of things that are available. There's really no lack of resource. So what we try to do as a gateway, as an entryway, is we try to populate our events calendar on our website. So connections.ca will take you to the right spot. With events and programs that we think will resonate with our young adults. So some of those programs, for example, would be a Bible and Beer series that the Ignite Young Adult Ministry runs every Tuesdays and Thursdays based here in Toronto. There are also, virtual retreats and galas and different things that people are doing. Different young adult ministries are doing prayer groups online. We also have a lot of work that we know of from the Archdiocese of Toronto that is available as well. So lots of different things that are available. And I think the catch remains this, are we devoting the time to finding them and discerning which ones are right and they're the right fit to challenge and enrich their relationship with God during this time of isolation, right? It's not so much for us at Faith Connections what the resources are and how many of them there are, but are they the right ones for you? One of our panelists last night for our special edition of Theology on Tap Central really said something that struck out to me, which is, don't make any big changes if you're in this time of desolation. If you understand the Ignatian understanding of consolation and desolation. There are all of these opportunities to take on new habits and skills and new, habits for prayer and for meditation and deep contemplative thought. But we also need to allow ourselves room to breathe and to be still with ourselves. And that may sound easy at a time like this, right? Because for some of us, we're just stuck at home. But the phrase, there's a phrase that's, beware the barrenness of a busy life. And that's attributed to Socrates. So, if that's correct, and the academics out there can verify that, that quote's over 2,000 years old. So we've been aware of this human habit to think that we are, engaged in doing a lot of stuff, but, we've been warned about confusing busyness for growth for a while now. So we would hope that young adults are giving themselves the time to look at those resources and really give them the time to find the right ones that are available for them.
Okay, so at the moment, a lot of these events are virtual, obviously.
Yeah.
But what happens afterwards when the quarantine is over, everyone's back out? How often will these events happen?
Yeah, I think that there's a difference for the young adults depending on where they are. If you are a young adult that is in a major urban center, with so many different things, recreationally speaking or liturgically speaking, you have access to all sorts of things. So in the Toronto area, Faith Connections serves all kinds of different events in person. Theology on Tap is an event that we will have in a bar when we're ready to do it. Bible and Beer, it's the same thing for our friends at the Ignite Young Adult Ministry. It starts off at a space that Ignite has for some reflection on scripture, and then they move to a local pub across the street, right? So there are all kinds of in-person physical programs. Social events that range, right? They range from heavy, contemplative, prayerful ones where you can really dive deep into those reflections. But then they also are very social. The first event that we had to cancel in person due to the restrictions around the pandemic was a board games night that we had on St. Patrick's Day. So we had organized a space where it would just be the young adult crowd. just board games and Guinness. I think I called it Guinness and Games. And so that was just a purely social thing. Anybody was welcome to it, not necessarily, heavy in the theological sense. So there's that broad spectrum that is available to young adults in the major urban centers.
Okay, well, here's a question for you. Someone who's just hearing about this for the first time, they're interested in participating. Which events would you suggest that they attend first or they look into first?
Well, the path that I would suggest is to check our events calendar. And I say that because it's not just our events. We really do put in a lot of work to try and populate as much as possible events from all kinds of different young adult ministries. And sometimes the events aren't necessarily religious in nature, but they would appeal to a young adult, someone who might be grappling with different things in their age and stage of, between 18 and 39. And going through our events calendar or a similar resource or directory like that, what resonates with you, right? What sits with you? If a board game night sounds excruciating, don't go to a board game night, right? But if something like Theology on Tap, if there is a subject that piques your interest, it's a very laid back format. Everybody is welcome. You would attend a Theology on Tap. Depending on the young adult ministry that's running it, they happen at different times throughout the month, throughout any given year. And just come out and enjoy it. There's no cost to attend Theology on Taps anywhere in Toronto. There's no cover charge to them. Whether or not there's that you have to, perhaps pay for your transportation or food or something like that. I feel like that goes with trying to engage in any kind of event. But for the most part, there's no, we try to create as few barriers as possible to get to an event like that and be able to take that in. Theology on Tap is an event that Faith Connections has been running for the better part of 15 years. So once the restrictions are lifted and we're able to enjoy each other's company again in person, it still is the flagship program for me that would stick out and that I would encourage people to dip their toes into young adult ministry and see if that's the right crowd and the right setting for them.
Listen, Sabrina, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about Faith Connections. And hopefully as soon as all this COVID-19 quarantine is over, that all the events will pick up again.
I hope so too.
Okay. Thanks again, Sabrina.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi there, Father Dave. Thank you so much for your time and welcome to Hope from Home.
No, it's very much my pleasure to be with you. Thanks so much for me.
So you've initiated a sweeping plan called the Step in Faith Plan. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what it is and what inspired you to create it and implement it?
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm certainly hoping and praying what inspired us to do it was the Lord and His Holy Spirit. So that's the easy answer, right? There's actually a lot that has gone into it, that we find ourselves in a very unusual time, very difficult time for so many people. This is actually, I'm just finishing my first year as president at Franciscan University, and I went to a little binder and there was nothing about global pandemics or how you're supposed to global pandemics. So I'm shooting from the hip here. But we're taking a look at a couple of things. A population of young people who are being impacted by this in a great way. And the reality is, I think, honestly, the high school seniors, at least in some cases, I think it's being minimized, the struggle that they're having. I remember when I was in high school, it was all gearing up to your graduation and all those events, and those were all gone for them. And just a question we were asking ourselves, what can we do for this population? The other is moms and dads who have been impacted financially because of COVID, and some have lost their jobs or incomes or various things related to the financial part. And then a concern and anxiety, I think, that some people have about going away or traveling or going away from home. So I've just asked my faculty and staff numerous times, I said, whatever we do, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it has got to be a step in faith. We've just got to believe that this is what the Lord wants us to do. Somebody who's on our business advisory board reached out to me and said, "Oh, Dave, I've got an idea. What if we provided tuition for free for new students?" So that wasn't exactly the step of faith I was thinking about. But the more I thought about it and prayed about it, the more I realized that I think this is what God wants us to do. So what we're doing is all new students, transfer and freshmen, will receive free tuition after grants and scholarships. But it's not just them. We're also working with our returning students that we've got a special fund created for them to be able to help them navigate these waters. So we're a small school. We don't have a huge endowment, but we're going to step in faith that the Lord is going to take care of that and help us out there.
Well, that's pretty remarkable. And just with you saying that you're a smaller school that does not have a large endowment, but yet you're taking these big steps. What do you think the impact of Step in Faith plan is going to have on the post-secondary education landscape? Because there are universities much larger, really large endowments, but aren't following in your footsteps. What do you think and hope the impact will be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just gonna. I can't speak to why other groups or other schools don't, but what I sense is that this is what God wanted us to do, and it provides. In fact, we just got an email from a student, actually from Vancouver, who kind of wanted to come here, but just wasn't going to work out. And with this whole opportunity, it allows her to be able to come, and that's our hope. Is it a population of students who there was a lot of anxiety about beginning school in the fall? It'll provide them the opportunity to do that.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. It's nice to see some Canadian content heading down to Ohio.
Absolutely. They're always welcome. They're always welcome.
That's amazing. Well, with this Step in Faith, obviously you're doing a lot that's impacting students and changing their lives, frankly. How do you think people, that aren't involved with the university, but we're all still impacted by COVID, how do you think people can strengthen their faith during this time and have their own Step in Faith moment as their driving force?
And that's really a great question, because it's the ones that I'm continually asking to the people that on campus, but then off campus as well, that this isn't just something that we're doing for the new students, but it's, I think, really a way that the Lord wants us to react and to respond to him. And that so oftentimes in our life, we're asked to make some kind of step in faith. It could be a little simple thing. It could be calling somebody that we're having a difficult time with or not need to be reconciled, and just being able to step in faith. So in my mind, it's a way of living our Catholic faith. And it's continually stepping in faith. Now, I think particularly now with COVID my experience in dealing with a lot of people, a step in faith for them is that God is still present to them, so they're not able to go to Eucharist, they're not able to go to Mass, they're not able to go to adoration, they're not able, and one of the things that I've reflected on is that, and it's unique about being Catholic and Christian, is that God comes to us. And then there's this sense, well, if I can't go do this, then let God be who God is for us and allow him to come. It's the mystery of our faith that God comes to us and he meets us where we are. So I think for some people, that's a real step in faith, that the same God who's alive can greet them and meet them in their living room or in their dining room, or as if you were to go somewhere else and encounter him. So I think that's important for us.
Do you think that it's maybe difficult sometimes for people, because we're so busy and generally so rush before COVID? Do you think like the slowing down and the silence adds to that? Or
I do. It's really interesting. I think we kind of get on this treadmill and we're just used to constantly going. And this is, I thought what the Holy Father said that Friday that he did the Holy Hour from St. Peter's, when he said, this is an opportunity for us to reevaluate what's important. And I think that's provided us an opportunity, that the silence and the stillness, the not being so busy at times. But unfortunately, and this is part of the negative part of human nature, is that we have a tendency, even though we have downtime, we fill it with all kinds of other things. I'm not opposed necessarily to Netflix or the Disney Channel or all those kinds of things, but let's take a few minutes and give the Lord some extra space there as well.
Well, what is your hope for people during this time?
It's honestly, Jermaine, it's the same hope that I always have, and that is an encounter with the Lord. I think what this has provided us is an opportunity to encounter the Lord in a different way. And that's one of the things that I love about God, is that he is so much bigger than we imagine him. God is the God of the universe, and this is not a surprise to him, that this is not outside of his control. God isn't up there going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do, right? He wants to be able to encounter us. So to that end, one of the things that I've experienced with some of the people that have responded and emailed me is that they've encountered him more in the Word, in the Scriptures, that that we are a sacramental church, which is wonderful and beautiful, and I can't wait till we're able to get back to the sacraments. But we're also a church of the word, that the scripture has a place of prominence in our life. So some people have shared with me that they've actually grown in a deeper love of the scriptures, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, I guess this time of discernment is a great time to dive back into the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Father Dave, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope everything goes fantastic for your students in this upcoming year.
Thank you. You're in my prayers as well. And all your viewers, the Lord ask his blessing and his grace to be upon them.
And that's all for today. Interesting what Dr. Adams was telling Louisa about his anxiety of working on the front lines at the beginning of this pandemic. Are you a doctor working during this time? Tell us how your experience has been. Also, it's good to hear how creative all Catholic ministries have been. Have you been participating in any virtual events like those offered by Faith Connections? And isn't the Step in Faith initiative at Franciscan University a wonderful way to help returning students? Are you a university student? What struggles have you been facing during this time? Share your thoughts with us by following Salt and Light Media on all of our social media platforms and commenting with the hashtag #HopeFromHome. If you missed any episode, you can watch it again at saltandlighttv.org/HopeFromHome or on our YouTube channel, Salt and Light Media. We hope that these stories inspire you to stay positive and remind you that we're all still connected through hope.